Jeez. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel Ray and today it's James and I here with the weird and wacky. Say hello, Mr. Ray.
Hi everybody.
Hi. So today we're going to be diamond painting on the mystery diamond painting from Diamond Art Club that's Christmas themed. So if you do not want to watch the video, I totally understand. But feel free to just listen in if you'd like. I'm going to quickly, before we get started, if you don't mind, I'm just going to tell them where stuff came from and how I do these things. So this is from 3D Art R&L. This is from France. It's a 3D printed tray. It has really high sides and I like it a lot. Those sides are really tall so you can shake and the diamonds don't fall out. And it has a stopper too. And then this is their card. There you go. You find them online. You just pause the screen and go check them out. And then I'm using this pen, which I remember that the Turner is also from France. Unrelated, not the same store. But I don't remember where I got it. It was one of those Facebook groups where they already had it finished, like they had it made. Anyway, I chose this one because it has cinnamon sticks in it. I don't know if you can see that very well. The light is really, really bright. But there's also like this honeycomb and this mesh stuff. It's really cool. I'm going to use blue tack. And I know that a lot of you have said that you've tried using blue tack in the past. And that it gets stringy. But I'm going to show you what blue tack looks like for me. I don't know if the Irish version of it is like less stringy or something, but I just kind of wiggle around. Oh, sorry, you're shaking as well. I wiggle around until it gets in there and then I make sure that it's like packed down in there really good. You might have some excess that you need to take out, but yeah, it works. If you watched my, what did I call it? Battle of the Waxes. It's a video that I made and 2 years ago now, I think, where I tried a bunch of different waxes to see their efficacy and how long that they last in the pen. Blue tack lasted for 9 hours.
Was that the longest?
Yeah. Usually it's about an hour. An hour, hour and a half, 2 hours is the norm for most things, but blue tack lasts forever. It's super cheap. You can find it at the stationery store. But you might want to get your oils from your hands on it to make it less sticky because it's going to be super duper sticky at the very beginning.
And it comes in white as well. You can get white tack right there. That's basically the same thing, though, isn't it?
I think it's the same formula.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's blue. And
do you think that we have a different formula here in Ireland?
I think there's a different formula in Ireland. I'm not sure. This is from the company Bostik.
Bostik, yeah.
All right, I'm going to uncover it, so fair warning. This is a boring section. We're not going to say what this looks like in case James is looking.
I just want to see it.
Just in case someone is listening and not watching. And I need a little bit of washi tape. So if your pen tips are coming out of your pen, you can take a little tiny bit of washi tape and wrap it around, and that will give it the hold that it needs. And now that I've put these fingernails on, I have to use other tools.
Why is that tape called washi tape?
Washi is a Japanese word.
Oh, okay.
And it's less sticky than normal tape, so it's good for scrapbooking. And other crafts where you don't want sticky tape.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was like, oh, it's not clean, but it's getting there. It's kind of washy, you know.
It's wishy-washy tape.
It's wishy-washy tape.
So I'm just going to cut off a teeny bit like that. Whoop. And then wrap it around the tip. Actually, I'll go the other way. All right. So, James, darling.
Yes, darling.
What weird and wacky stuff are we talking about today?
Today I thought we'd talk about. Well, let's see what we're talking about. We're going to start off with the Green Children of Woolpit.
Woolpit.
Yeah, Woolpit. Yeah.
The Green Children.
The Green Children of Woolpit.
Okay.
So what do you think? What do you think the crack with that is?
I think that must be English or something.
Yeah, it is. It's actually in Suffolk.
Yes.
In East Anglia.
I was only guessing.
It is, yeah, and it's actually yeah, like I said, Woolpit is actually is a town in Suffolk.
Okay.
It's close enough to this big town there that they've got called Bury St Edmunds. You know. And I guess so. That's the story anyway. We're going to talk about these green children of Woolpit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the story really takes place in the 12th century.
Oh.
No.
Oh my.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wait a minute, East Anglia, the 12th century? Does this take place during the reign of Stephen? Yeah, it does take place during the reign of King Stephen. That's some good knowledge there, right? Like it's
Wow.
yeah, so it takes place during the reign of this guy Stephen, you know. And the thing about it is that it's quite well documented in contemporary sources, you know.
Yeah.
Like usually a lot of these things, especially if they take place at this period, they don't get written down until much later. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
But in this
It would have
case,
been like word of mouth or something.
yeah, usually they're like stories that come around. Like for instance, around about the same period they were writing down the Lower Gawala Éireann, which we talked about before, and that had all of the stories of the Tuatha Danann and the different people that had invaded, you know, the Miletians and the Fomordians and stuff from Irish mythology.
If you haven't seen that video, go check out our Halloween video in the weird and wacky playlist.
Yeah. So, like, but when they would have written those down, the guys in Ireland, those stories already would have been hundreds, if not thousands of years old. Like, they were old oral traditions. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas in this case, it actually got written down. And it got written down by two people who were kind of contemporaneous of it, you know?
Okay.
One of them was William of Newburgh.
Newburgh.
Yeah, and he was an abbot of a monastery, obviously, but he was also kind of a chronicler and a historian. You know,
Is it true that sidebar? Is it true that around that time that the most like the people that would know how to read and write were mostly like religious
I would say,
in the Western world?
yeah, I would say that the people that were literate would have been monastics or whatever, or people that would have, and then obviously you would have had the gentry and stuff like that, because you're talking about a feudal system, you know. And within this feudal system, a lot of these monasteries were one of the feudal powers, you know, like they ran land much like an earl would, or you know, a baron or whatever. I believe in England it was barons.
Okay.
And the other thing as well that a lot of people don't realize is that, like, at that time, chastity wasn't an enforced thing, you know.
Ooh.
In monastic communities and stuff like that. Certain ones, I believe, they would have, but a lot of these fiefdoms were handed down to the son, who would have become the abbot. Then, you know.
Okay.
And a lot of them would have been run very much like feudal things. That's my understanding of it, you know.
Okay.
So that's the crack with that. And at the time there's a guy. So there's William of Newburgh, as I said, abbot, chronicler, historian, contemporaneous to this story.
All around good guy.
Yeah, and then there's a guy with the very unlikely name of Ralph of Coggeshall. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right either. It's Coggeshall, Coggeshall, I'd say. But Ralph just seems like such an anachronous name for someone at this period, doesn't it? This is Ralph.
Maybe he had German heritage, right?
Ralph and his brother Athelwulf. So anyway, Ralph then predictably is also an abbot, a chronicler, and a historian.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happens is it takes place in this town Woolpit, right?
Right.
Now Woolpit is what we call it now. but in the past, at the 12th century, they would have called this village Woolpit. How cool is that? I let that sink in there. It was called Woolpit, and then they would have spelt it Wulfpytt, Woolpit.
Huh.
And what it was a wolf pit was a pit dug in the ground
Yes.
for trapping wolves. No joke.
James.
Honestly, you can go and Google these. Go and Google wolf pit, and you will see a hole in the ground. The ones that I Googled were lined with stones because I was like, I can't understand what this is, you know? And
I mean, it's in the name.
there's loads of these dotted around the countryside around this village, and that's where the village took its name from these wolf pits, and then over time it became Woolpit.
Oh, I see.
It got changed over time. And
Probably because sheep were falling in
yeah, I mean when they say wolf,
when the wolves were eliminated.
well, my understanding is that they were used to hunt. Well, not hunt, but trap animals.
Right.
You know. So you're talking about like elk and deer and wolf and whatever's going. You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, they call them wolf pits. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a number of these around the place. And the village of Woolpit is it's in the barony of this guy Richard de Clane, you know?
Okay.
I think that's how you would pronounce his name.
Richard.
Richard. Let's call him Richard, yeah?
Yeah.
So it's in the barony, it's in Richard's kind of barony, it's his fiefdom, he runs this area, you know?
Yeah.
He's the guy in the big house, essentially. Yeah. So it's the 12th century, no one knows exactly when. But it's around about harvest time, yeah? So the people are out, the, tenant farmers and stuff like that. I don't even know if that applies in the 12th century. The peasants
Right.
are out working in the fields busily. It's sometime in August or September. They're reaping, you know?
Yeah.
They're out there reaping away, collecting the bushels of wheat or whatever, I guess, oats or barley or whatever they're growing, all the various different vegetables, and they're out there.
Potatoes.
Yeah, exactly. And then they hear this noise coming from the wolf pit, you know? And they are like, they go to investigate, and they find these two children in there. And they're young children.
Okay.
There's a boy and a girl. And the boy is a little bit smaller than the girl. Yeah?
Yeah.
And they're green. They have this green tint to their skin.
Huh.
And they go in and try and ask the kids, where are you from? What's going on here? And all this sort of thing. But they don't speak any English at all. They're speaking in their own weird tongue. They're not really talking to anybody, you know?
Yeah.
And nobody can really understand them. So they don't know what to do. So they bring them up to the big house, to Richard's place, you know?
Okay.
And nobody's quite sure what to do with these two young green children that have been found in the wool pit, you know?
Yeah.
But they know that they must be hungry, you know? So they keep trying to feed them food. And they bring them a little bit of food, different food every day, you know? And no matter what kind of food they bring to them, the kids won't eat it. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then after about 3 or 4 days, these green children are out and they're walking around, and they come across some broad beans, and they go hog wild for the broad beans. They start eating them straight off the plant.
Yum.
Yeah?
You're finally hungry.
Yeah, exactly. And this is after days and days and days. So this is kind of the first thing they eat, and then slowly over time they start to eat a bit more, you know?
Okay, good.
Part of the problem as well is that the boy is a little bit sick, you know?
Okay.
And before they're picking up little bits of English and stuff as well as they go along, because obviously they're immersed in it and they need to communicate and stuff like that, you know? Unfortunately, the boy kind of passes away before they learn any English. The girl is employed by Richard as a servant, and slowly over time she learns English.
Okay.
Yeah. Then she starts to explain her story and what's going on.
What'd you say?
She said that her and the boy are brother and sister, and they come from a land called St. Martin's Land. And St. Martin's Land is a place where everybody has this green tint to their skin,
Okay.
and that it's underground. It's a subterranean type of land. There's no real night or day.
Yeah.
It's always a perpetual twilight. And on the day that they were discovered in the Woolpit, what happened was that herself and her brother were out with their father, and they were looking after livestock. And the father goes away and says, look after these cattle here, you know, make sure everything's cool. And off he goes to go about his business, whatever he'd be doing. And they said that they heard these bells, you know. Now there's two different versions of the story here. One of them is by William. Do you remember William of Newbury?
Yep.
Or Newburgh?
Newburgh.
William of Newburgh says that they heard this cacophony of noise, you know, and that they followed it, and this noise turns out to be the bells of Bury St. Edmunds, the monastery at Bury St. Edmunds, you know. So they're following that. Then the other guy, can you remember his name? Ralph.
Oh, Ralph, yeah.
Yeah, Ralph says that what happened is that the cattle, they see one of the cattle straying, and they go to follow the cattle and the cow, and it goes into a cave, you know?
Yeah.
But either way, the story is the same, whether they're following the cow or whether they're following the bells of this monastery, you know? That they go into a cave, they walk through the cave, and when they come out the other side, they find themselves in this wolf pit or wolf pit.
Yes.
And that's basically their story. Yeah.
Do not use fresh blue tack on AB diamonds.
What are AB?
I'm glad you asked, James. They have that special coating on them.
Oh, kind of iridescent.
Iridescent, yeah. It makes them stand out. They're in here. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So over time as well, you know, over the years, as they kind of get accustomed to the food and they're not living in a subterranean life or whatever, their skin basically, her skin becomes clear, you know, and she looks very much like you or I, you know.
Yeah.
And in fact, let me consult my notes right here. According to Ralph, you remember Ralph? Ralph of Cosgill, one of the people. According to Ralph, she was employed as a servant for many years by Richard de Clane. And she was considered to be very wanton and impudent.
She has attitude.
She's got tude, yeah. And she lives by her own rules, like the rules of the land of St. Martin. So she's considered to be very, very thin. And your man, William of Newburgh.
I come from a land down under.
Yeah, your man William of Newburgh, yeah? He said that she worked for Richard de Clane for several years. And then she got married to a guy that was under Richard de Clane, you know, in the feudal system or whatever. And he was a man from a place called King's Lynn, which is about 40 kilometres away from, or about 65 kilometres away from Woolpit, about 40 miles away from it, yeah?
Okay.
And that she was still living there with her husband at the time that he was writing. You know?
Yeah.
So in both of these cases, the story actually took place very, very close to
When it was written.
when it was written, yeah?
Yeah.
There's another guy then, let me see. I didn't take down his name, to be honest. Like, but there was a guy that did research, that wrote a book and did a lot of research into Richard de Clane's household and stuff like that.
Okay.
And he thinks that this girl really did exist. This is a recent book now, you know.
Okay.
Well, I say recent. It was in the 60s or whatever. Like, did research into Richard de Clane and thinks that the girl was named Agnes because she kind of appears in the record around about this time.
Okie dokie.
And she kind of appears out of nowhere, and then she's just a member of the household. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he thinks that this is a lady called Agnes. This person called Agnes as well that he's researched did get married to someone from a while away. It's mentioned in the book. you know, or it's mentioned in the records and stuff like that. There's also a guy called Bob Roberts. No joke, Bob Roberts.
Why? Why do people do this?
I have no idea. But he definitely wants to go by the short of his name, doesn't he? He doesn't want to go, Robert Roberts, pleased to meet you.
Yeah.
But Robert Roberts is actually a coffee brand over here.
What?
Yeah, Robert Roberts. Do you not know?
No.
Did you not know that? No.
No.
Yeah, Robert Roberts is a coffee brand. And in 1978, he wrote a book called A Slice of Suffolk, you know, where he looks into a lot of the folklore around the region.
Okay.
And he says, and I'll quote directly here, I was told there are still people in Woolpit who are descended from the Green Children, but nobody would tell me who they were. Now this is like, if there were people descended from the Green Children, like that was 800 years ago.
Yeah.
There's going to be hundreds of people. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, anyway, so that's the story. And the other person that wrote a similar story, and I'm bringing this up because he's come up before in our chats on Tuesdays. Mm-hmm. And the person is Gerald of Wales. Do you remember Gerald of Wales?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, Gerald of Wales, like, who wrote about Raymond Le Gros. Mm-hmm. The guy who built the first house on the place that is the most haunted place in Ireland, Loftus Hall.
Yeah.
And Gerald of Wales was Raymond Le Gros, which means Raymond the Big. He was Raymond Le Gros's cousin. And do you remember how he described Raymond?
Go on, tell us.
He said that Raymond was corpulent and with a massive appetite. And that's his cousin. Like, try and find a nice way of saying that. It's like, he really likes food, man. You know, he's a bit of a gourmand. You know?
Oh, God. Savage.
So I brought that up because I thought that was an interesting callback. But Gerald of Wales, who was writing at the same time, yeah? Mm-hmm. And he tells a kind of a similar story. And his story is that there was this boy who, he's a servant, you know? Mm-hmm. And he basically, he's supposed to be working and he escapes his master. And then he encounters these two pygmies. And he follows the pygmies into a cave. Mm-hmm. And then they go through an underground passage. And then he emerges in this land that has fields and rivers and everything, and it looks very much like our land, but it's not lit by the full light of the sun. And it also has this kind of perpetual twilight quality, and it's a subterranean world, you know?
Right.
Very much like the world they described.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is a thing at that time, you know?
Maybe.
But that's the story of the Green Children of Woolpit.
Wow.
What do you think?
Interesting. I mean, I know that there are people that have blue skin because they've drank, is it lye or there's some chemical that you can drink and it turns your skin blue?
You can definitely get
Is
blue.
there something for
You can
green
definitely get blue skin from drinking colloidal silver.
Ah, that's what it was.
Which is something that Alex Jones would be delighted to sell you.
People say colloidal silver is like antimicrobial or something, and that's why
it is antimicrobial, like, but it's been a quack medicine for hundreds of years, you know, because like silver and stuff like that is has antimicrobial qualities to it, you know. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, if I was going to slay a striga, I would definitely be using a silver rather than a stainless steel sword.
If you don't know what we're
whatever.
talking about, we're referencing Witcher.
It's a Witcher thing, yeah. Or like if you wanted to kill a werewolf, you would use a silver bullet, right? Not a regular bullet.
Right.
That's not going to do it for you, is it?
Well, not most fandoms, no.
I believe what I think I read up on it before, and what happens is that you drink the colloidal silver, it reacts with the acid in your stomach, it creates a blue salt. The blue salt is absorbed into the epidermis, or pushes its way up to the skin, but your body has no way of clearing it out, so it builds up over time, and eventually you get a tint of it. I mean, if you want to see something extraordinary as well, people out there in internet land, if you've never seen it, do Google blue skin from colloidal silver. What happens?
It listened to you.
Is
You
it-
have to call it Dougal. You can't call it the G word.
Oh, is my phone? Is this what you mean? Weirdos with blue skin. So that's the story. Yeah. I guess let's talk about what they say. Some explanations for this are. You know?
What do you? Yeah.
So as you know, Stephen is the son of Henry II. You know, and his older sister, I believe, was called. I didn't write. I'm going to freestyle this because I didn't take any notes on this.
Let's give him a good name.
I fell down a rabbit hole with it, and I read probably more about about this family than I did about these green kids in Woolpit and stuff. But it's like the green children of Woolpit is a really famous story, you know.
But you were talking about.
But we're talking about some of the explanations. So the crack with it is that Stephen had an older sister called Matilda, you know?
Yeah.
I think her name is Matilda. And Matilda was married off to some count, you know?
Okay.
But he kicked the bucket.
Right.
So then she managed after she was widowed, very quickly after being married, you know? She was widowed and she ended up married to the Count of Anjou.
Anjou.
In France, you know?
Okay.
And who was a pretty powerful count, you know. And that's fine. She has kids with the Count of Anjou and stuff like that. I think Stephen's older brother passes away, and the crown goes to Stephen after the father's death. Except Matilda and the Count of Anjou claim it. They're saying, "Oh hell no, that's our throne," you know. Stephen's just a young kid and all that. So they start a war then between them, you know. And what's happening is that there's like almost a decade of pretty serious fighting between them, you know. And it's making a mess out of mainland Europe, and there's all these other families getting involved and they're fighting as well, you know. And I don't think it's related, but somewhere along the line, a load of people from Flanders, what's Flemish now territory, you know,
Oh yeah.
they got displaced as refugees, and they had to go somewhere, and they ended up in Suffolk on the coast. Now, they would have been displaced, like within the feudal system, there's no UNHCR or whatever.
Right. There's no
Yeah.
refugee program.
I mean, I would imagine at this period as well, currency is pretty rare, you know?
Right.
Like your currency is a full belly and some
Chicken.
land to work at so that you can make more stuff to put in your belly, you know what I mean? And a lot of the money and stuff. And I mean, I think that this would have been true up till very recently, you know?
Right.
Like even, let's say, you know, back 150 years ago, like you didn't really need money so much as what you needed was subsistence farming. You know, and I think that's true of any period in history up until the very recent. You know, it would certainly have been true in Ireland 150 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it would have been true in America as well, I would think.
Yeah, because even like three generations ago, everybody would have had a garden plot and would have like.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
themselves.
there wasn't as such. You weren't living under, you know, a kind of consumer society. You know, the thing to consume was the potatoes you grew. You know, your biggest problem was how are you going to store that corn or wheat or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these people were displaced and they ended up in Suffolk on the coast. You know.
Okay.
They're surviving on pretty much on whatever kind of alms and stuff they can get from.
Whoops.
I guess probably religious organizations and stuff like that. At the time, of course, there was a lot more unity within religions. Like there hadn't been the schism within Christianity, I think, you know. But I think you would have had a lot of very local flavors within Christianity, you know. Like if someone was, so what I'm saying is that people wouldn't have been. They would have been seen as our fellow Christian brothers. So they were probably surviving on alms and stuff like that.
Okay.
Now, if you're severely malnourished, you can get this condition called chloriosis, where your skin gets a kind of a greeny tint.
Oh.
So the explanation here is, as well, I read that between where they were in Woolpit and where these Flemish refugees, I guess we call them now,
Yeah.
But between where they were, it was very heavily wooded, and there would have been caves and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that because they were young kids, they were, 7, 8, 9 when this happened. Like, so they may have explained it that way. That they lived in a land of darkness, and blah blah blah, and all this. And they ended up. So that's really the explanation. At the other side of it as well is that, like, this is all taking place in the 12th century, like, so it's hard to say what it really is. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. Is it?
Well,
could it be our space brothers?
I mean,
honestly, we've covered this before.
It could have been our space brothers, like, but like they don't. Do you know that's like a new part of the narrative as well? Because we discussed this before. Is that like you're using the language that society provides you with to explain experiences,
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite possible they could have been space brothers, but fairies would have been an equally possible explanation, or you know what I mean. They came from the land of the She or whatever, like, maybe they're changelings, and the language changes now. Like we used to call them the fairies or the fae or the She or whatever, like, and now we call them like our space brothers and the Palladians, and do you know what I mean?
You're getting too far ahead of ourselves. I'm trying to do the callback, babe.
What's the callback?
The callback. Don't you remember when we were talking about the people that live in the middle of the earth?
Who are the people that live in the middle of the earth?
You don't remember?
Like from Irish mythology, the guys that live on who?
No, we had an episode
about the people that live in the middle of the earth.
Yeah, didn't we?
No.
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
Really?
A long time ago.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was with the Sue lady.
Like not Hollow.
Not Sue.
Not Hollow Earth stuff, is it?
Yeah, well, kinda. Where there's a base inside the earth.
Oh, we were talking about, we mentioned that, all right, because that took place near Sandia Mountain or whatever.
Yes.
Like, yeah, but it's
sorry, folks.
They don't live inside the earth. They live in a deep underground base, a dome.
Oh.
They're grey aliens and stuff. I think I said that we might talk about that because it's a crazy story. Like,
I thought you were leading into it.
No, not at all.
See, sometimes when I ask James what we're going to talk about, he won't tell me what we're talking about, but he'll be like, "It's going to be a callback," and I'm prepared.
Well, I said it was a callback because, like, when I saw Gerald of Wales, I was like, okay, well, Gerald of Wales, that sold it for me. We got to do this, like.
Wow.
No,
it's very interesting. I think it's kind of cool that I didn't know that you could turn green from malnutrition.
That's what I read anyway. Yeah. So that's really what they think. But at the end of the day, like, it's a story from 800 years ago. Like these things develop and grow over time. And I think it's like if you go on there, there's like literally a pub called the Green Children of Woolpit in Woolpit. Do you know what I mean? And it's a famous. It's certainly not my first time hearing about it. It's one of those kind of Fortean stories. You know what I mean?
Oh, right.
Where they're just it's just one of these like weird stories.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the crack. So then I thought, well, it's interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought maybe I could find some stories about people that claim to be extraterrestrials. Do you know?
People themselves.
Yeah, people claiming to be extraterrestrials.
Oh.
Or claiming to be from the Hollow Earth or something,
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out people aren't foolish enough to actually try and do that.
Oh.
But they probably are, but they just don't get widespread recognition.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I wonder why.
Yeah. So then I fell back on a story that I've known for many years. I think everybody really in the UFO one will know it, and it actually takes place in West Virginia.
Country mama.
I have to say that a lot of cool stuff happens in West Virginia, but not a lot of cool stuff like this happens in, the other Virginia.
Hey.
So,
Hey.
What's that all about?
Listen.
Do you have any?
No, I don't have an answer, but still, that's rude.
This actually takes place in West Virginia, yeah, and it takes place in 1966. Okay. And can you think of anything else that took place in West Virginia in 1966?
Coal miner revolt. I don't know. Is it something big?
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Can you give me hints? I'm focused on diamond painting, so my brain is kind of empty at the moment.
It might have been an owl.
Oh, right. Sorry, I didn't know you were talking about that. I thought you were talking about normal world stuff. Mothman?
Yeah, it's Mothman. Yeah. Mothman took place in 1966 in Point Pleasant. All
right.
So this takes place in 1966 in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, other things as well from West Virginia, like the Flatwoods Monster and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are all happening in West Virginia, but Virginia's got nothing. Do you know?
Listen.
You guys you've got
Stop
to
throwing me under the bus,
you
man.
You gotta up your paranormal game down there.
I don't live there anymore.
Up the paranormal game in Virginia.
Do you hear that, Virginians?
Virginians, get out there.
Actually, show him up, Virginians. Tell him.
Tell me some stuff, because I remember before I was like, oh, it might be fun, because people suggested like Dogmen and stuff, the Beast of Bray Road and all that, and I went looking into Dogmen, and there's quite a few in West Virginia, and there's the only one I could find in Virginia was on this website. I swear to God, it's actually called something like American Dogman or something like that. And it's basically a website where you can go and put in your stories about your encounters with the Dogman. And there was 2 stories from Virginia. And one of them was like, I heard a noise outside. And when I went out, there was a big paw in the dirt. And the other one was, he saw a dog-like face looking in the window. And when he went out, he saw something scarpering off on 2 and 4 legs. These were all...
Not 3?
Just 2. Do you know what I mean? It was kind of like...
Yeah, no,
it was loping,
didn't know if he was getting it confused with the other guy.
No. So that's the crack. But anyway, we digress. Let's get on with this. So there's this guy, Woodrow Wilson Darrenberg. Okay?
Not the president.
Like, if you start looking at people born in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and stuff, it's a bit like, how many people from American history do you know called George Washington?
1.
What about George Washington Carver?
Oh.
Do you know? Or what about George something else, who it turns out his second name is Washington, is like his middle name is Washington. There's loads of people that are called after these famous guys from history,
Yeah.
And like Woodrow Wilson is one of them. Another one is like, I can't come up with them now, but do you know what I mean? People get called after it. So anyway, Woodrow Wilson Darrenberg, let's call him Woodrow, okay? Woodrow is a sewing machine salesman, yeah?
Okay.
And he's on his way back from a sales gig he had in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is one of my favourite parts of the story. He stops the car to adjust a sewing machine that he has in the back of the car, in the back of his van.
Just moving around back there.
I love that little detail, like that he stops the car to adjust the sewing machine. Like, what happened? Could he hear it rattling around? Or was he, like, driving down and he was like, oh my God, I forgot to put up the plate in Ohio. You know, so he stops and he's back there, like, fixing it or whatever. So anyway, he's driving down the road. Yeah?
And he stops.
He fixes the machine. He gets back in the car and he starts driving down the road again, yeah? And then he sees this weird light ahead of him and he thinks it's an ongoing car, but it's not moving, yeah? And then there's just this guy, so he has to stop, like, it's kind of blinding and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And he walks along, yeah? Or sorry, this guy comes out of nowhere, yeah?
Okay.
And he's this really big, tall fella, you know? And he's wearing this kind of metallic suit on him.
Ooh.
Yeah? And it's a metallic suit, but it looks like it's a jacket, a green jacket, with it's cinched at the waist with a black belt, just to really show off his feltness, you know?
It's bigger.
And then it's got these metallic green pants as well. But the metallic green pants are supposed to be a slightly different colour, you know?
Okay.
And he's wearing a shirt underneath the thing. And he is grinning ear to ear, you know? He's described as being like about 6 foot tall. He's got very small beady eyes that are set very far apart. And he's wearing this reflective thing, you know? He's got his hair slicked back. And like there's a lot of different versions of this story. I'll talk about this later. But he's grinning ear to ear, you know? Like a disconcerting grin. You know, one of those ones where you're looking at the grin and then you look at the eyes and then you look back at the grin and you're like, they don't match, you know? Like he's grinning in the face but not at the eyes. And he's talking to Darrenberg, yeah?
Okay.
And he says, oh, don't be afraid, Woodrow. You know? Like, we mean you no harm. I've come in peace. But his mouth isn't moving. He's talking telepathically to him as he's walking down the road.
Oh, no.
And all your man can see, Woodrow, is this big grin on his face, you know? And then he stops by the window and he's like, why don't you roll down the window, buddy? You know?
Oh, this is creepy.
I wouldn't be afraid, like, big grin on his face, metallic suit, tall fella, you know, slicked back hair. So Woodrow rolls down the window, you know? And your man's like, we come in peace, or I come in peace, like, I'm just checking out this place, you know? And he goes, what are you called? And then he said, well, I'm Woodrow Wilson Darrenberg, you know?
Okay.
And he goes, what are you called? And the guy goes, they call me Cold. They call me Indrid Cold.
Indrid Cold?
That's his name, Indrid Cold. Yeah. So he's on the side of the road looking at this tall fellow with the grin, with the disconcerting grin, you know?
Okay.
And they're talking to him like, and he starts to tell Woodrow his story, you know?
Yeah.
And he says that he's actually from the planet Lanulos in the Ganymede galaxy. Yeah?
I just have to get more diamonds.
And the Ganymede galaxy is 14.2 light years from Earth. You know?
Yeah.
And I guess that's the story, really. Like, I mean, he tells him.
Wait. Sorry, I was.
And they talk. They don't really talk much beyond that. Like, there's a general message of goodwill and peace, and that he's come from the Lanos galaxy, and like happens outside of the town of Parkerville, you know, in West Virginia, and he points. Indrid Cold points at the town, you know? And he goes, what do you call that? And he goes, that's Parkerville. And he goes, this is a Parkerville where people live? And he's like, no. That's a town, you know? That's where people, like, you know, there's businesses there. People can go in and get stuff in the shop.
Why would you tell him?
Because this is one of our space brothers and he doesn't really understand what's going on. Do you know? And he's just trying to get it across. So the space brother goes, oh, well, where I come from, we live in communes, you know, like it's like a commune kind of thing where nobody wants for anything. What are these shoops you talk of? And he's no, that's pronounced shops.
Shoops.
And he goes, it's where you would purchase items. And then other people, He goes, but what are, purchasing stuff? I don't get it. And who's in the store purchasing stuff? Do you know who are they purchasing it from? And it's like other people. Those people sell those things. And this Indrid Cold is like, oh my God, my head is actually blown here. You mean everything isn't held for everyone according to their need and all that? Do you know?
Yeah.
And so anyway, they have a bit of a chat, and then Indrid disappears. Yeah?
Just poof.
Well, I mean, he goes down, he walks towards the light, and then the light winks out and he's gone. Mm. Do you know?
Okay.
Woodrow straight away then goes home and tells his wife. And then he contacts the newspaper.
I can only imagine what she said.
He contacts the newspaper and it ends up in the newspaper. Yeah?
Okay.
And then within a week, he's doing this live interview on, I think it's on the radio, you know?
Uh-huh.
It's on TV, but the only ones that I could find seems like it's from the radio. I couldn't find the TV one, but I could find the audio from it. And I'll send you the link for it. It's about a half an hour long. And what it is the guys from the TV, but I could only find the recording of it. They get some scientists and stuff, and they all question him, and he just submits to this questioning for a half an hour, about a week after the event happened, you know? And then that's kind of how it becomes big. Yeah?
Okay.
Then what happens then is that after he makes the statement, actually, guess what happens? Because there's always the same pattern with these things.
It happens again?
Well, loads of people come forward and they say that something very similar has happened to them.
Right, of course.
So the first one is, this happened, Woodrow's experiences in November, yeah, of 1966.
Okay.
Okay, so his experiences in November, and then these two kids come forward, yeah, and these kids are from New Jersey, and they said, wow, back around about the middle of October, you know, about a month before this happened to Woodrow, I was sitting there. I'm going to play James Jimmy Yanchitas. Call me Jimmy.
Jimmy.
And he said, well, I was down the old baseball diamond there with my friend Martin Mouse Munov. That's his nickname, Mouse. Mm-hmm. So me and Mousy are down there and we're hanging out, you know what I mean? He goes, and next thing you know, he says, next thing you know, I look over and I see this guy. And I'm like, hey, Mouse, who's that guy standing behind you? And they looked around and they said that there was just this guy standing behind a fence, just standing there, staring right at them. Big old grin on his face. He's wearing a blue shiny suit, cinched at the waist with a black belt. And he's got a slightly lighter coloured blue trousers on him. And the jacket, basically the same description as Woodrow, but the clothing is green.
Right.
You know? And he says they saw it there. The kid, they said that they said that he had like unnatural facial features, you know? Mm-hmm. Slicked back hair and everything like that. He didn't have any ears or nose in their story. Ew. Now, Woodrow said that he looked enough like a person that you would be like, that is one very weird looking person.
Okay.
You know, like had features, but not really, you know? Whereas these guys say that he didn't have any nose, he didn't have any ears or anything. Big grin on him. Tried to talk to them in their heads telepathically, grinning disconcertingly the whole time. Mm-hmm. And they did what any sensible child would have done. Yeah, and they ran away as quick as they could. Luckily, this dude was on the other side of a fence. Yeah? Yeah. So they came out afterwards and they said that that's their story. Yeah? Then, what's his name? Woodrow, yeah? Mm-hmm. He comes out and he says that that actually these guys have visited him a couple of times. What am I trying to say? Yeah, he comes out and he says that actually this may not have been Indrid Cold, it could have been someone else. Let me consult my notes here. He said it could have been someone else because when he was talking to Indrid Cold, he mentioned that there were 2 other people from his planet, the planet Lumos, in the Ganymede galaxy, 14.2 light years away. And they were called Demo Hassan and Carl Ardo.
That's not going to work. Demo, what?
That there were actually 3 of them from the planet. Oh man, I gotta keep looking. Lanulus.
Lanalu?
Hang on. Lanulus. There's actually 3 people visiting Earth from the planet Lanulus. There's him, Indrid Cold. There's Demo Hassan, and there's Carl Ardo, and that they're here as well. You know.
Okay.
So he says it could have been one of them. It could have been Demo, or it could have been Carl. You know. Then another girl comes forward. It's actually the Lilly family, you know? And the Lilly family are from Point Pleasant in West Virginia. And this is 1966, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So this is the height of the Mothman thing in the very place that the Mothman thing is happening, you know?
Yep.
In the town that it's happening, in the year that it's happening. So what happens is that this family were experiencing a load of poltergeist activity. Yeah?
Okay, yeah.
And they think that it was centered around the girl, around the young daughter in this family, yeah? And then she recounts this story about how she woke up and there was this tall guy at the bottom of her bed. She could see kind of a shiny suit on him, and she could see this grin in the darkness, but she couldn't make out anything else because it was dark. And just this floating, disembodied grin, you know? Yeah. And then she said he walked around the side of the bed and leaned over the bed just right over her face, and that she couldn't make out any features, even eyes or anything, just this grin. And then, hang on, I'll read a quote from her actually. She said it was a man, a big man, very broad. I couldn't see his face very well, but I could see that he was grinning at me. He walked around the bed and stood right over me. I screamed again and hid under the covers, and when I looked again, he was gone. And the family attribute this to kind of poltergeist activity and stuff like that. But do you remember the guy that wrote the book about this, John Keel? Mm-hmm. That wrote the book about the Mothman that kind of popularized the whole thing? Okay. And at the time, West Virginia, and around Point Pleasant was experiencing a lot of like kind of UFO activity and all this kind of thing, yeah? Mm-hmm. And your man John Keel is a journalist from New York City. So he'd come, oh wooey! So he'd come down and he was investigating it, yeah? And then that's how he got into all of this kind of stuff. Like he was talking to the Lilly family and they described this. Then he found out about your man Darrenberg, you know, about Woodrow and his story of the thing. So he went to interview Woodrow. Mm-hmm. Now, he went to interview him and he took some stuff for his book. And then years later, he went back to interview Woodrow, you know? Okay. Now, what had happened is that Woodrow had kind of stopped talking about the Indrid Cold thing, yeah? Yeah. But he couldn't stop thinking about it and everything like this. His marriage broke down because of it. Mm-hmm. He lost his job as a sewing machine guy, salesman, and nobody else would really hire him because, you know, he's just been tainted by this thing, you know? Yeah. So your man John Keel, when he goes to visit your man Woodrow a few years later, he said that like he's become very reclusive and that he's paranoid about all of the UFO people that keep bothering him and showing up, which in fairness I would think they probably did. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that he had like gated up his property and, you know, he was inside in the house and he was kind of saying, oh, it's all these UFO people, they're always around here and stuff. And he starts to tell Keel as well that your man Indrid Cold comes to visit him all the time. And he just basically drives up in his Studebaker or whatever and gets out and they have chats on the porch. Oh my. You know, like old friends. Good to see you, Indrid. Woodrow! You know? So
now
that's...
Now that my wife's left me.
That's pretty much it, like, yeah. So they have big chats about that, like. And I mean, it's even Keel himself was saying like that in the end. He had, you know, that he felt he had become that it had broken him. The whole experience had broken him. You know.
Did he feel responsible?
Keel.
Yeah.
I don't know that he was, but like looking at these things kind of do that, you know. Like if he had never gone to the local paper and had the TV station and then done the half an hour live interview on it and then ended up in the books, you know what I mean? I mean, there's people out there right now with absolutely inexplicable experiences that don't talk about it. Do you know? So it's hard to say, but I mean, like, definitely a lot of like, without the people writing the books, there is no UFO movement. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess the thing about it is that after his experiences, like Woodrow's experiences, this whole Indrid Cold thing kind of takes off, you know? And you can go online and you can find people that are saying, oh, they've got photographs of Indrid Cold at the UN loads of times. And that, you know, he was going back. He used to drive from New York in his car down to meet with Woodrow and take advice on stuff. And then he was pulling strings in the back, you know, of the UN and stuff like that. I mean, there's any number of stories like that. Like, I guess the other thing as well is that, like, the Indrid Cold character doesn't really tie in with any of the Space Brothers races, you know what I mean?
No. Not really. No, but he does sound very creepy.
Yeah, like, all of the descriptions are super creepy with just this disconcerting grin, like, and but there's never really been anything sinister about it. But Woodrow does say that when the guy walked up to the window with this grin and he could see him and he was like going, how is he grinning and talking at me? And then he realizes, oh dear, kind of, you know, he's talking to me in my head, you know?
Yeah.
And then he's just like, oh, don't be afraid, you know, I'm not here to hurt you, open it, you know?
Yeah, that's gonna make me want to trust you.
Yeah. I mean, like, if someone opens with, I mean, you know, harm, that's disconcerting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's really it. Like, I just thought it was an interesting one to kind of look into because it takes place in the whole milieu of the Mothman. You know what I mean? And it gets rolled into the Mothman because John Keel wrote it in his stories about the Mothman.
Right.
You know? The other thing I wanted to mention as well is that, like, is that there's some similarity in this. Do you remember Gary Barker?
Not off the top of my head.
Gary Barker was another writer from West Virginia, and he wrote another book about Mothman at the same time that John Keel wrote the book about Mothman. But Gary Barker was a writer for the Fortean Times, you know, which is which is the original magazine about weird and inexplicable things, you know. Published originally by this guy Charles Fort. And you know, still to this day, like, anything like this, like, they would call it, you know, like, oh, it's Fortean or it's high strangeness, or, you know, these are all kind of terms that they use for it or whatever. But Gary Barker wrote a book about the Flatwoods Monster because he was actually from Flatwoods, or he's from Braxton County, I think, which is close to Flatwoods. And in that book, he is the first person to report and popularize the idea of the Men in Black. That these guys from unknown, shadowy governmental organizations show up in suits and start strong arming and silencing people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's the other callback, or these two writers in this case, John Keel and Gary Barker, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I guess that's really all I have to say, you know? I think it's interesting as well, like the kind of parallels between, just going back to the first story, this idea of caves being entrances to different places. Do you know, we talked about it in the Samhain one,
Yep.
There's literally a lady that follows a calf into the cave in that case and comes out in Sligo, you know?
Right.
These children follow cattle into a cave and they come out in a Woolpit, you know, or the kid that follows the Pigby and comes out in the underground places and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not exactly a new trope.
It's not a new trope, no, but it's just it's interesting these caves being veils between our world and the next, you know, or our one world and another world, you know.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Holes?
No, what's that?
You haven't seen it?
No.
I think it has something to, I could be totally wrong about that, but vaguely I remember a movie from the early 2000s, maybe.
Holes.
Anyway, yeah, Holes.
Okay.
I have to look it up.
All right.
Yeah.
And that is
interesting. Sorry, I went a bit off rails there.
No, it's okay. I went
wait,
off.
if that guy wasn't, if that guy hadn't pushed it, and you know, I feel like he kind of ruined that guy's life.
John Keel.
Yeah.
I don't think he was involved in. I mean, I don't think he did. Like, I don't. It's not that this story was in Keel's book that popularized it. Do you know what I mean?
No, he did all the television and radio.
Yeah, I mean, he did that himself, though. He chose to do that.
Oh, okay.
Do you know?
Okay.
So I don't know. But I mean, you can go. I mean, like, it's a thin story, really. You know. And it doesn't really have the usual directness when our space brothers communicate with us. They usually have a very concrete message, you know?
Yeah.
And it's usually like, what's the matter with you guys? You know?
Stop hurting each other.
Get rid of the nuclear bombs. Take care of each other.
Love each other.
Yeah, you know? Maybe it's not all about,
but I guess it could be that's one of the not so brotherly brothers. You know, you've got the guy outside the baseball diamond with no ears and nose.
Grinning at children.
Grinning maliciously at children.
I like the grinning touch because it's almost like they're like,
it's so creepy.
What do these people do with their faces, you know, to put each other at ease? I shall do that also. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's almost like they don't understand. It's a bit.
There must be horror movies about that.
It's a bit like if I wanted to bond with a dog, so I just walked up waving a feather duster behind me or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, and the dog can smell on the heels.
It worked. She woke up.
Yeah. So I mean,
okay, well,
what can I say? That's my shoddily researched chat for today.
Thank you for your shoddy research for the day. Okay, we are pretty much finished with the story, but last time we asked if you had children to ask them to draw a UFO with no context, without showing them any videos or pictures, and we got 2 entries. So I'm gonna go ahead and insert the 2 pictures that I got here. So the one that's on the left is from, I believe, I don't remember exactly who it is. It's either Forever Sparkles or Size 69. The first one here, just to protect their identity, I don't know, I don't have permission to use their first names.
Of course.
But here's the first one that I received that's on the left. And then I'm showing James as we're doing this. And here's the one that'll be on the right.
Oh, they're both really, really good.
They're really similar, right?
Yeah.
But the second one is in color.
And they've it's interesting that they both got the beam, you know, the beam coming down from it, like.
Yeah, they both have beams.
Yeah.
And I think they both have circles inside.
Yeah, they both.
Yeah, look.
That's like lighting it.
Lights.
That's like the lights and stuff.
There's also a circle in the middle. Do you see the circle there and the circle in the middle here?
Oh yeah, is that? I suppose that's where the
Maybe
like
to indicate the top.
maybe so, yeah, or maybe that's where the pilot is or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They are so cool.
Isn't that awesome?
That is really good. Yeah, yeah.
So thank
yeah.
you so much, ladies, for asking your kids to draw for us.
Yeah, thanks
That's
so
really
much.
cool.
That's brilliant. Like, yeah, it's really good.
I thought that was really neat. We were just trying to see, would kids draw the same thing? And I think they would.
Yeah, that is it. It is really interesting. They really did. I'm surprised that both of them went with the choice to do the beam, like the tractor beam thing. Like, yeah.
Well, I suppose that's what makes it stand out as an alien UFO, right?
Yeah, and it's the business end of the UFO, like they're manipulating something with that field, you know what I mean?
Business end.
Like, yeah, but they're not imaginary if they're like sucking up cattle or beaming themselves down or whatever, Like that beam is essentially the hand of the hand of our space brothers,
That's right.
It also makes both of them look like mushrooms. Which is fun too.
That is fun.
Because I'm a fun guy, they're fun guys.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Right, and also comments from last week. So Diane, no, yeah, Diane, Diane's diamond painting.
Yeah, we are feeling much.
She said, "I was really scared for a little while because I thought you were going to talk about Sue." We just want to clear something up.
Like, yeah, Sue is great. Like, Sue, I love Sue. Like, I think Sue is good. Like, because you can go, like...
Let's just reintroduce Sue for anybody who doesn't know who we're talking about.
Oh, this is Sue Walker. Is that her name?
Yes.
Sue Walker and the Reverend White Otter.
Yes.
They are, they live in... close to Sandia
Mountain.
Sandia Mountain, yeah.
I'll link the video.
And like
that we talked about them.
Just to put it, like Sandia is one of those places. It's like it's one of those places that is huge in kind of like UFO mythology and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's these guys, the Sandia Mountain. What are they called? The Sandia Mountain something, I don't recall now. But anyway, they're extraterrestrials. They're from the planet to Polchek or something like this. They're a real nice bunch of guys.
They're really good.
They're a real
brothers.
nice.
They're the ones that taught us that we can't, that graze is a slang.
That graze is a slur, is a racial slur.
Yeah.
And that, like, a lot of people that are coming out with this, like, they're grifters, I'm looking at you, Stephen Greer. A lot of them are grifters. These guys are not grifters. Like, they have a Twitter account, and, like, people ask them questions where they could easily be grifted, and they're just like, no, you're doing great. Keep going, you know what I mean? Or, what's the need for the future or whatever, like, and and they've got Radar the hotshot pilot, Radar the hotshot pilot, and they've got your one from the language department, and they've got the lady that does they've got Commander Tealcom, who's here to keep the wheels on the bus and keep their mission of enlightening people alive.
Because Radar crashes.
Radar occasionally crashes and he has to get out of trouble.
If you haven't seen the episode, is what we're trying to say. If you haven't seen the episode, please go watch it because it's hilarious. And Sue and Reverend White Otter do kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cyclical. Because the reason I got into them was because I wanted to talk about Sasquatch and UFOs and the connection there. Mm-hmm. And they had and I came across a chat that they did at a symposium about psychic Sasquatches. And I lean really quite heavily towards the psychic Sasquatch explanation of things. Do you know? Honestly.
It makes the most sense. And then when she said the stuff about when she said the stuff about the strange lights that accompany Sasquatches and stuff like that, and that they might just disappear suddenly, that's because there's invisible spaceships in another dimension, and when someone opens the door, the light shines out, and then the Sasquatch can step through that doorway into the invisible spaceship that's in the second dimension or third, the fourth or fifth dimension, I presume. Like,
Yeah, I think we're up to the 5th now.
well, it's hard because, like, I was saying to you earlier, like, because I hadn't, do you know, like,
Don't touch the box.
sorry.
It's
I
very
was
noisy.
saying because I was saying to you earlier that like that all of this UFO stuff is experiencing a resurgence, you know, with Tom DeLonge.
Here's a squishy thing.
Thank you.
You can squish it. Ew. No, God. That sounds worse.
With Tom DeLonge and Luis Elizondo and all these guys coming out in the last 2 or 3 years, and of course like the actual irrefutable stuff that the Navy have released with these incredibly inexplicable things doing inexplicable stuff,
Yeah.
and it's become so popular. And I was saying like that I hadn't really been following or abreast of UFO news until about a year or two ago. I think probably
It was 2020.
2020, like, but in 20, like, to be honest, I had seen the videos and stuff, and I went, "Wow, that is inexplicable." But do you know nobody
Yeah,
else
because that
was?
was 2016.
That was in 2017, I think.
What's that?
Yeah, and I remember even reading the New York Times article about it.
Okay.
And being like, wow, this is amazing, and then being surprised that nobody that it seemed to just be disappearing without much, And then I guess I started looking into all these things and all this kind of stuff, but it seems to be gaining traction now,
Yeah. People are waking up.
Yeah, and I mean, as like, I guess the other thing about it is that whenever you start talking about this, everybody always expects America. They're the guys with all the info. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you can even see it, like, when stories take place in different, like the Irish Roswell story. Like, it wasn't the Irish troops that showed up and tried to silence people. It was, like, suspicious American-looking troops, and the same story again in Australia, And I mean, like, Russia as well has quite a history of, conspiracy theories around government cover-ups of crashed crafts and contact with aliens and stuff like that, but the actual physical form that their spaceships and crafts and stuff take is different.
Yeah.
Like one of the famous ones from Russia is probably this jellyfish thing that's supposed to have been this huge lighted craft, that was over a place in northern Russia somewhere,
Okay.
like not the main places that we know on the western frontier, but over on the eastern frontier or whatever, and that it was floating above, and then it let down all these different beams, and they call it the jellyfish one, and they've got like submerged ships that are in the water, and then they leave the water, and then they follow them, but they're all shaped like bullets and stuff. So it's a different type of story, in Russia,
Right.
but it's broadly a similar one, like. But I'm losing my train of thought here. Yeah, so everybody expects like the American government are the ones hiding stuff, but then
Everybody.
well, there's something even scarier about it. What if they're just as much in the dark as us and they're just styling it out?
Yeah.
What if it's all inexplicable to them as well? Like, they're not in contact with people from the Pleiades, The guys from Zeta Reticuli are not returning their calls.
You're on your own, buddy.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, stuff seems to be happening, but like anytime it does, then you're going to get
Well,
a
I
load of...
mean, you have to think about it this way. The whole climate change, climate crisis stuff, it's amping up now. People are getting serious about it. And
Thank you for dragging me back, like, to the point I was trying to make. Yeah, a lot of the story now, like, a lot of the narrative has changed, like, that the aliens are here to help us ascend to 5D space, like, because there's all these separate dimensions and stuff, and there's been a huge shift from the Pleiades or Zeta Reticuli or something like that, and the shift now is that they're interdimensional,
yeah.
and that the stuff that we see, the balls, like the orbs of light, the cigar shapes that seem to be physical crafts and all that, they're projections in 4 dimensions of things that exist in different forms in higher dimensions.
Right.
So, like, the 4 dimensions, of course, are your physical space, but also time added to it. And that these aliens are here to help us ascend to 5D space, which is a kind of quasi-spiritual thing that's been knocking around the kind of, what would you say?
The circles, because
Because
that's what they're saying about Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're saying, and it's coming from. It's a lot of it is coming from kind of yoga and healing circles.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. You know what I mean? And it's being like there was a time. I guess the last time I was paying attention to any of this, the aliens were really worried about 2012.
Yeah.
The coming of 2012 in the future.
Aztec calendar.
Yeah, exactly. But like now the narrative is that the aliens, and they were really, like previous to that, they were really worried about nuclear weapons and stuff. The narrative that I have is always related to that they're worried about nuclear weapons and nuclear power, you know? But now it's shifted. They're worried about climate change, you know? So I guess what it is as well is that, these extraterrestrials are a projection of our worries.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I'm sure that we've covered that before. But yeah, it's absolutely having to do with the times.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, climate change is going to be a serious issue, and it's going to get more serious. Like, but we're the ones that have to fix it. No one's coming from Zeta Reticuli to fix this.
No, that would be lovely.
It would be so nice.
Oh, that's what I was saying last night. So what I was saying last night was, wouldn't it be lovely? I know that you watching this, some of you may be like, oh my God, I can't believe those people actually believe in that stuff. We're being satirical, but also, wouldn't it be lovely to be the kind of person who would be able to just have faith that these things are true? I would love to be that person. Because I feel like it's worry-free.
Yeah, I mean...
You can go, okay, there are aliens that are going to come and they're going to take us away from all of this. We can just let it go. Keep doing what we're doing now because the planet's destroyed and we're just going to move to another dimension. I think there's a lot of people that live like that. And
there's a lot of, yeah, there is definitely, yeah.
I mean, you can substitute whatever you want in place of aliens as well.
But
anything.
I guess, do you know what? I'm going to say this to you as your Earth brother, you know? Like, everything the Space Brothers said is probably true, you know? Like, go out there. It's tough enough to live in this universe, not to mind this planet, like. And just go out there and be nice to people. You know what I mean? Try and see their point of view.
Right.
Help each other out.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And that's it, you know? Like, yeah, I mean, I don't, like, to be honest, it's, like, I don't know what to feel, but like, are there aliens flying around?
You believe them?
Who?
You.
No, like, this is the thing as well, is that, like, if you're going to believe a lot of this stuff, you know, 80 or 90% of it.
Oops.
No, look at your thumb. Now look at your blue tack.
No, I forgot about the ABs.
If you're going to believe this stuff, really, about 80 or 90% of it is going to be on old school religious faith, you know? And that's because when you start looking into it, it's a pretty thin gruel that's being served, you know? Because what it is that you'll go and look into something and it's like, oh my God, there's loads of information about this. But once you start reading the information, you'll realize that all of that information comes from one source at some stage. A newspaper article in 1966.
Yeah.
An interview that this guy did on a TV show. Do you know what I mean? Like, all of the sources. It's not like now there are other ones that are different from that. Do you know what I mean? But But 90% of the cases, it's usually just one guy told a story. You know what I mean? And then other people, once you tell a story, other people come out and they're like, going, oh my God, that happened to me. I was lying in bed and I saw that guy. And, you know, another guy comes out and he goes, me and Mouse were playing, you know, we were playing baseball, and on the other side of the gate was this guy that looked just like what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So it kind of snowballs from there or whatever. Like, but
Yeah.
I mean, is there other life in the universe? I would be hella surprised if there weren't, if there wasn't. Is it visiting us?
Probably not.
Probably not. No, probably not. Unless it's got some very exotic physics, you know?
Yeah, because I mean, how does it wouldn't survive on a meteorite.
Yeah. But then, like, you know,
I need glue.
if you look at it as well, like, we've come a long way, you know? I mean, like, 200 years ago, if you told a doctor who also was a barber and a dentist, that was basically the job description at the time. If you'd have told a doctor that you think it's probably a good idea for them to wash their hands before they start doing the bloodletting, they'd have laughed at you. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, you know, like, and we've come up with, like, germ theory, and, like, right now we're using, like, you know, like, sci-fi type technology that was only invented 10 years ago to genetically build a vaccine from the ground up with this RNA CRISPR-Cas9 stuff and all that, you know. Like, that's proper sci-fi stuff, you know, but we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know? So I mean, maybe faster than light travel is possible, you know. Maybe the Pleiadians are out there whizzing through, like, wormholes and stuff. I don't know. All I know is that, like, whether they're real or not isn't going to make a difference until they come out and they're like, that's right, guys, we're real, you know? And tonight, we're on the Tonight Show, you know what I mean? Whatever, like.
Don't look up.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's enough. Is that enough?
Yeah,
that's enough. That's
we're
enough. That's enough, like, absolute, what's the nice way of saying? What's the nice
You
way
can't
of saying?
curse.
I know. That's enough,
Faffing.
no, it's not. Well, faffing's really, like, wasting time. That's enough. What am I trying to say?
See, I'm not the only person in this house that struggles to find words.
Yeah. If I could just use some of the rude words, it would be okay. That's enough balderdash from me.
Boulder Dash.
Yeah, that's enough balderdash.
Nice.
Yeah, and waffle. That's enough waffle.
Yeah, enough waffling. Thank you so much for joining me today. Us today.
Yes.
The section is complete. Look at that.
Oh, that's a nutcracker dude. I'm not supposed to
You're
say.
not supposed to say anything.
All right.
We're not, because this is a mystery and some people don't want to know.
Is it custard? I think it's custard.
Yeah, it's custard.
Yeah.
Sure. Right, so I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please let us know and also give us your feedback. If you have any requests, speaking of the number one request is Skinwalker Ranch. Don't extrapolate now.
Okay.
Because we've already gone way over our time. But maybe, possibly we'll do it. Maybe.
No, I'll do Skinwalker Ranch. I haven't. I mean, I remember reading a book about it back around about 2000 and something or other.
Okay. Well,
maybe it was.
Your wish is our command. Yeah. At some point we will. But in the meantime, if you get a wild hair and you want to, we have a whole playlist of these videos for you to enjoy. So check it out. I hope that you enjoyed our Theory Tuesday, aka Weird and Wacky with Mr. Ray. And we will see you all soon. Next time. Next week? Maybe. Thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody!
Bye!